TOEFL is a test of English as a foreign language, as you may or may not know, but you don't really care. I'm just saying the name of this exam. What the TOEFL is a test to measure how well you can provide specific things that they require from you. Again, they will be asking specific information and you just have to answer what they ask from you. This is very important because it's important to remember that all we're doing here is answering specific questions. We're not answering a very general or a very like an infinite amount of question types. There's a limited amount of question types and there will all be presented when you study. So as long as you know the question types, you will be able to answer them. It's a measure of your English level in specific situations. Again, there's a limited amount of possible situations that you're gonna find in a TOEFL exam. It's not an infinite amount. It's not like they're going to put you in a situation that you haven't prepared for. Most of these situations will be college level texts or conversations or lectures. And it's something you need to go study or work abroad. This is also important because remember, this is just a tool that you need. This exam is just something that you need. This is not an end in itself. Okay, like yes, we're studying and we're taking this as our goal, but in itself, it's not your ultimate goal. Right? Your ultimate goal is to study abroad or to work abroad. Now, what the test is not, and this is very important, is not the ultimate proof of your English level. This is very important because you may think that if you have a good score in TOEFL means that your English is perfect, or you may think that if you don't, it means that your English sucks, and it's not that way. It's important to remember that this is just an exam, okay? Like getting a good score in the exam means that you can get a good score in the exam. And not getting a good score in the exam means that you cannot get a good score in the exam. That's it. It doesn't mean much more. I mean, yes, it has certain implications. Like, of course, if you cannot communicate in English, you probably won't be able to get a good score in the exam. But it doesn't mean that you need to have a spotless, perfect English in order to get a good score. Especially not the score that you want. And it's definitely not as hard as it seems, okay? I mean, I'm not saying that it's easy. I'm not saying that it's a piece of cake, but I'm saying that people usually have an idea, a wrong idea about the TOEFL. They usually think that the TOEFL is harder than what it is. Okay, so before you start studying, it's important that you take a practice test. Why is it important you take a practice test? Because you want to see how much you improve. You may feel that you're improving, or you may even feel that you're not improving. Okay, but you don't know until you take a practice test and you can see like week to week or every 2 weeks or every month how much you have increased, or maybe you haven't increased and maybe you can know. Okay, it's important because you have to know that whether you're progressing or not, and by how much. You need to quantify it. It's also important to know your goal, which means what is the score, the specific score that you need for the specific school or whatever you need a TOEFL for. Why is this so important? Because you definitely want to work towards your goal. There are also certain schools that have specific goals. For example, they require a certain score in the reading section. So one thing is to have the overall goal, the overall general goal score. And the other thing is to have the specific score per section. You have to know both. So ask around, ask to your college or whatever your future workplace, what is your specific goal, and you want to work towards that. Why? Because you definitely don't want to spend too much time studying for the exam. So let's say your goal is 100, you just stay or stop when you reach 100 or maybe 105. You don't wanna overreach it. This does not mean that you're not always aiming for perfection, or you're not always aiming for, understanding the whole thing. But it definitely means that if you have something else to do, maybe you're working, maybe you're studying, maybe you have to take your SATs or your GMATs or your GREs, it means that you have to know how much time do you actually want to spend doing one specific part of the whole application. Another third thing you have to do before you start studying: plan how many hours you will actually devote to study. Because most people start with a very idealistic picture of themselves, in which they're going to study 4 hours every day from Monday to Saturday. I'm not going to go out. I'm not going to watch Netflix. I'm not going to spend time on social media. And you plan for 4 hours a day, so you think you'll be done in 3 weeks. But then in reality, you study, 1 hour per day, you know, at as the most. And yes, you don't want to fall for that, right? You want to plan realistically how many hours you will actually devote to study, taking into account your commute, taking into account your probably your naps or your workload or your family time or your friend time or your relationship time. You take all of those into account and plan how many hours you will there's a mistake here, how many hours you will actually devote to study, and stick with it. Okay, again, try to be realistic based on your own experience. And lastly, get a notebook, a real notebook. So nowadays we're all technological and we like to take notes on our phones, we like to take notes in our iPads, and sometimes we just screenshot whatever the teacher is saying and we just don't pay much attention. So my advice for you is get a notebook and copy and make annotations by hand. Okay, take notes by hand. This is very important for a lot of reasons. It's important because it's easier to retrieve information, because here I'm about to say something I'm not 100% sure, but supposedly you remember better things that are written by hand than just something that you may have watched or you just I don't know, screenshot it. So it is important that you take another notebook. Another important thing about this is that it helps you being more organized. Okay. Now, while you're studying for the exam, as I said before, take notes by hand, because apparently it makes you remember the things that you write down even more. I'm not 100% sure of that, but in my experience and my students' experiences, that has been the case, at least most of the time. Another thing, a very important thing, is that you copy important information, even if you think you will remember. Even if you're taking the classes from a private teacher, from an academy, a language academy, or just watching things online, copy the important information. Sometimes the teacher will tell you to copy. For example, I always say copy. I always tell my students when to copy, and I expect them to copy when I say so. Why? Because most of the time you won't remember. Yes, it's very important, you won't remember. That is why we keep notes everywhere. That's why we sometimes write things in our hands, because we won't remember. Okay, even if you do remember, you definitely don't want to spend brain energy trying to remember something that you can just look up. Another thing, respect your schedule. This is very important. Remember that I told you to be realistic about the time. So since you had been realistic, it means there's nothing that can get in the way for you of your studying. Which means, yes, you took socializing into account, you took family time, you even took your Netflix time into account. So don't watch the extra episode of Netflix if you already allow yourself to watch one. Okay, like, try to respect the time that you have allotted for studying. And finally, be organized, which means be organized about your material, especially. Okay, so if you're using one notebook for theory, don't use it as a scrap paper for the practice test. Okay, if you are studying, let's say this is your notebook, so you're studying here, and this is like you miss a class, just leave the blank space for the class to be completed afterwards. Okay, like, try to be organized, try to have your notes in order, try to have maybe color coded. I always color code my notes, so it's easier for me to spot what or to which thing each note corresponds. Okay, while taking the exam, this is something that you definitely want to copy for later, and you definitely want to watch it for later too, but it's good that you have it in mind from the beginning. So take notes on listening, speaking, and writing. This is something I'm going to repeat when we reach those specific sections, but it's very important to take notes. Just as it's important to take notes while studying, it's definitely important to take notes while you perform the exam. Again, you may remember, okay, you may have prodigious memory and you remember word for word whatever the audio says, but you don't want to risk it. Okay, and Then again, you may remember, maybe you're not taking any risk, but you don't want to burden your brain. Okay, this is a very long exam, and you get the reading section first, and you get the listening section second. You don't want to remember every single information that they give you. Okay, you want to have your brain fresh and almost new, quote unquote new, for the old exam. Okay. Don't leave any questions unanswered. Remember, the TOEFL is a multiple choice. Well, listening and reading and listening are multiple choice sections, which means you don't want to leave any question unanswered. And then speaking and writing, there are no multiple choices, but you can still fill it. I know it's hard, or at least harder, to leave a question unanswered when you don't have multiple choices, but still very important that you do it. And when you practice the art of always giving an answer. Okay, it's better to be wrong than to have no answer at all. This is very important. So in class, always give an answer. When you're practicing alone to yourself, always give yourself an answer. And as you move on with your practice, always give yourself a limited amount of time to give an answer. The third thing is to mind your time. That doesn't mean that you're going to be looking at the time every 10 seconds or even every minute, but it's important that you pace yourself. For example, in the reading section, let's say you have three passages, so you have your allotted time, you divide it in thirds, right? So as you don't want to check question by question, but as you finish question from 1 to 10, you stop a moment and you see the time. If you're at the third of the allotted time, then you're on time. But let's say you already passed and you're at half the time, that means you're running out of time. So you always want to kind of be aware of how much time you're taking, but you definitely want to be over aware and, checking every minute or every question. And finally, stay hydrated. This is a general advice. Always want to be hydrated in life, but definitely an exam, because your brain will thank you. Okay, now the sections. The TOEFL has 4 main sections. Okay, the reading, the listening, the speaking and writing. The reading may go from 54 to 72 minutes. You may get 30 or 40 questions depending on how many passages you have. The listening is from 41 to 57 minutes, and you may have 28 to 39 questions depending on how many how many lectures you have. Then you have a mandatory break, and then you have the speaking of 17 minutes that always contains 4 tasks, and a writing of 50 minutes that always contains 2 tasks. Now, about timing, the reading and listening sections can be sped up, which means you can, if the reading section has just 3 passages and has 30 questions and they give you 54 minutes to answer, if you do it faster, you can get the extra time and you can just cut it, which means it gives you 54 minutes, but you can maybe finish it in 40 and you have 14 extra minutes, or you have 14 minutes less of the whole time, right? And then let's say the listening section too, right? The listening section has 41 minutes, but actually you managed to do it in 35. You still have 6 more minutes. Now, the reading section can be reduced to whatever time you want, okay, but the listening section not, because you have to still listen to the mandatory lectures. So yes, there is a minimum amount of time that you can spend in the listening. Now, that doesn't mean that the extra time you're saving here will be allotted here or here, right, to any of the other 2 sections. It just means that your whole exam will take less time than originally thought. Then you have a mandatory break, and then you have the speaking and writing sections. The speaking and writing sections cannot be sped up, so you have to just spend the time, like they say is the time that it is, right? So even if you talk faster, you're still going to have your answer in the 45 or 60 seconds that are allotted. So there's no way you're going to finish speaking and writing earlier. Okay, we're going to go to the sections. So the reading section, you may get 3 or 4 passages. Okay, this depends on the extra passage. The extra question has to do with this. You may have 3 passages is the typical number of passages you get. You may have an extra passage, just a trial passage. They don't say it, which means they don't say this passage is an extra passage. They don't say that. But the last passage does not count for your overall score. Now, you are pretty much unaware of that until the very day of the exam. It's not like they're not gonna let you know in advance. You have 10 multiple choice questions per passage. This is important. They are all multiple choice, which means you can guess. This is very important because you have 4 possible answers, okay? And most people don't use on their advantage. But if you guess, you have a 25% chance of getting it right. If you eliminate 2, you have a 50% chance of getting it right. So that's why you should always give an answer, because there's at least there's at least chance that you get it right. And the reading section is from 54 to 72 minutes. Again, you can reduce this time if you answer the questions faster. And the texts are university level texts. They come on different topics, university level topics like science, literature, history, anthropology, biology, etc. You do not require to know any single topic in advance. And actually, it's important that if you do know any single topic in advance, just pretend you don't. We're going to see this when we go to the reading section, like to the whole reading section videos. We're going to go to the listening section. The listening section has 3 to 4 lectures, about 3 to 5 minutes, about 6 questions each, or 2 to 3 conversations, and 2 to 3 conversations of 3 minutes each, with 5 questions each. This section may also include extra questions. This is why this is not an exact number. You may get 3 as a typical listening section. You may get 4 if you are in a tryout section, or 2 to 3 conversations. Now, these are all also multiple choice questions, which means the same principle applies. You can guess, don't leave any question unanswered. Again, we're gonna see this in depth when we go and see the listening section. In this section, it's very important to take notes. Okay, this is where the note taking starts. You're gonna take notes for most of the sections, so basically for all except the reading section. Okay, now we're going to go to the speaking section. The speaking section has 4 tasks, and only 4 tasks. There's no an extra possible task. Then there is an independent task, which is about your opinion, and there are 3 integrated tasks, which is a combination of listening plus reading, or maybe just listening and then you have to speak. You may have 15, 20, or 30 seconds of preparation, and you have 45 or 60 seconds to respond. Again, if you finish your answer, let's say they give you 6 seconds, and you finish in 50 seconds, you cannot click next to the next question. You have to wait for the 60 seconds to end. That's why we cannot speed this section up. And the whole section takes 17 minutes always, because you cannot speed it up. And just in case you're wondering, this is scored by a combination of AI and human raters, which means there will be a human at the other end, but it's not a human alone. Okay. And now the last section is the writing section. The writing section only has 2 tasks, 1 integrated and 1 independent. Oops, I just realized I messed it up. So the integrated is listening plus reading. The integrated task takes up 30 minutes, and the independent task takes up 20 minutes, and combined there are 50 minutes. And again, this will also be scored by a combination of AI and human raters. Okay, recommended materials for studying. I recommend the reading. For the reading section, I recommend the complete guide to the TOEFL test IBT, the edition by Bruce Rogers. This is called the THOMSON book. You can Google it, or I will share the links to the book in the description of this video. For the listening and pretty much for all of the other sections, I actually recommend that you use YouTube videos. There are at least 2 channels that I'm also going to link in the description, and they're very good channels, and I have used those videos for a lot of classes, and you have complete tests. I don't advise that you use a book for listening, nor speaking, nor writing, because basically you're not getting the format in which the text is given. The test is given, right? You want to listen. For the listen, you want to listen. And I also don't advise you to spend too much money buying guides or buying material when you can get it online. All the links are in the description. And finally, recommend tutor. I, of course, recommend myself as a tutor. But of course, if you don't want me to tutor you, or you want a preferable tutor or a preferable academy, you can do it. I do have certain recommendations for online tutors. I mean, for you to find an online tutors. I don't. It's important that you don't pay extra cash for material you can get online. Some tutors or some academies charge extra for the material. Now it's okay that they charge extra because they're photocopying it or they printed in it, and that's definitely a cost. But it's not like they're creating the material. So it's very important that you and that you notice whether you're paying for real intellectual property or you're just paying for overpriced photocopies. And also important that you're not wasting class time doing long readings. So there are things that you could do on your own. I never make my students read in class. I mean, just for the I always make them read for the special samples, but every single long reading should be done at home because there's nothing your tutor will help you while you read. Okay. Otherwise it's just a person watching you read or just a person watching you listen to videos. Again, nothing wrong if you want to pay for that, but I don't think it's the best use of your money. And that was it. You can leave any questions in the comments. And this is my webpage where you can find this and more resources. You can also find more resources in the video list. Okay, bye.